The political scene in New South Wales has changed. There's the new Labor Party leader, Chris Minns, and he's able. Just as in Queensland, where the Liberal David Crisafulli has breathed new life into the opposition, the government there, that's just been re-elected, has got a fight on its hands. Crisafulli will take the fight to them. As you know, there's no opposition in WA. The Liberal Party were wiped out. In South Australia, the Liberal government is in minority. And in Victoria, an utterly discredited government, if not dishonest, has no opposition. Well, the Labor Party in New South Wales elected unopposed the man you've come to know on this program every Wednesday night, Chris Minns, a 41-year-old father of two, a Princeton University graduate who has that rare quality, relatability. Gladys Berejiklian in New South Wales is immensely popular, but behind the scenes, she can be very dictatorial. You might recall last week, I gave her a rap because there was talk of bringing 250 international students into New South Wales on chartered flights and then undergo quarantine. And this was just an initial influx, and I said, well done, Gladys. Universities would fund the quarantine sites. There were 4, apparently, identified. As you will recall, last Thursday, it was to be debated in Cabinet. I said, good idea. Well done, Gladys. Well, now the universities are offside. She'd publicly declared her support for the plight of the universities. The university sector had worked very closely with the Treasurer Perrottet on the plan, and I understand many government officials had worked tirelessly over many months for the green light to be given. What happened when it went to Cabinet? Gladys said in a very dictatorial comment, quote, I set the agenda, and it wasn't on the agenda. And Cabinet was there to deal with crises, evolving situations and priorities. So the plight of universities is not a crisis. I set the agenda. Gladys, you won't get away with this nonsense with Chris Minns. Did you set the agenda, Gladys, when your government decided that after more than 150 years, the churches would no longer operate cemeteries and all their assets would be, well, basically confiscated by the government? The bureaucracy would run cemeteries. Hello? A new bureaucracy. One Crown Cemeteries. Remove all the faith groups from any involvement in cemetery management. And this is after extensive discussions with the Catholic Archbishop, Minister Pavey, the Premier, Maronites, Muslims, Jewish, Christian Orthodox, Buddhist communities, all supporting one another. This dictatorial streak was there with forced council amalgamations, banning the greyhound industry. And in 1 week, first the universities, now the cemeteries. Is there a hidden agenda here? Did a backbencher threaten to resign if there was a new cemetery next to that electorate? And after the upper hunter, wasn't the Premier confident that she could persuade voters to her story if the member resigned and caused a by-election? This is the same Premier who demanded the expulsion of Matthew Mason Cox immediately he was democratically elected President of the Upper House, a Liberal. But he wasn't Gladys's choice. She demanded he be expelled. She was forced into a humiliating backdown when the State Liberal Party Directorate promptly and comprehensively apologised to Mason Cox and the expulsion edict was withdrawn. Now another captain's call, cemeteries. There's no way this issue has legs. Not now there's a new Labor leader, Chris Minns, who looks young, educated and ticks the boxes. He can prosecute a case accurately and responsibly. I've no doubt he's coming after Gladys on some of these issues. You can't defend the indefensible. The forced council amalgamations were indefensible. The public were ignored and trampled on. The greyhound industry was only saved by the intervention of people like my former radio colleague Ray Hadley and I. And Gladys, do you know something about arithmetic? Before you start taking on the churches and universities, listen to this. The primary vote for the National Party in 2011 in the seat of Orange, the centre of big greyhound industry, was 56.7%. In 2015, the primary vote, not party preferred, two-party preferred, primary vote, 65.6%. But then, Gladys, you and your team thought they could trample on the greyhound industry, and you were absolutely belligerent about forced council amalgamations. There was a by-election. We got into it. I broadcast from Orange. The 65% primary vote became 31.6% with a swing of 34%. And by the time they got to the last election in 2019, the coalition seat was gone for good, 25%. A swing from the previous general election of 39.77%. Is that not enough? Darryl Maguire would ring some bells for the Premier. His primary vote in 2015 was 53.8%. In the by-election caused by his resignation, a swing against of 28.3%. And in the general election, a primary vote of only 26%. The seat is gone for good. The moral of the story, if you think in politics you can behave like a dictator and walk over the greyhound industry all local councils, all the university sector, and now the churches, you may as well go across to Chris Minns, shake hands with him and say, I'm handing you the keys to government. Now remember, Gladys, at the last election, against the unelectable Michael Daley, 93 seats, your government lost 6 and had a swing against it of over 4%. Chris Minns, I can tell you, is no Michael Daley. Back off, Gladys. I can tell you the troops are getting restless about some of these captain calls. Cemeteries are the latest.